The moment Anna held her newborn son in her arms, she felt the world shift. Exhausted, trembling, but overflowing with love, she barely noticed the hospital door open until she heard the sharp, cold voice of her mother-in-law, Margarita. The older woman's heels clicked aggressively against the floor as she approached the bed, her lips pursed in tight disapproval. She didn't congratulate Anna, didn't look at the baby, she went straight into accusations. According to her, Anna had trapped her son into early fatherhood, had ruined his plans, and had no right to stay another minute in the maternity ward. Margarita's words stabbed through the small room, each harsher than the last, and Anna, still weak from childbirth, could only clutch her child a little closer. She tried to respond calmly, but the older woman kept raising her voice, insisting she would take the baby herself if Anna didn't get up and leave. The nurses tried to intervene, but Margarita waved them off, declaring she was family, and had every right to be there. Anna felt tears welling up, partly from pain, partly from humiliation. She wondered where her husband, Ilya, was. He had promised to be there early, yet he was nowhere in sight. Margarita continued her tirade, threatening to call security and remove Anna, for her own good. The room seemed to shrink with every word, the bright lights suddenly too harsh, the air too heavy to breathe. Just as Anna felt she might break, the door swung open again, this time without hesitation, and a figure stepped inside with a calm authority that instantly silenced the chaos. It wasn't Ilya. It was Anna's father, a man who rarely raised his voice but whose presence alone demanded respect. He had arrived earlier than expected, still wearing his work jacket, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene. For a long second, no one moved. Margarita's mouth hung open, mid-sentence, frozen. Anna's father walked slowly to the bed, placed a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder, and finally turned his gaze toward the mother-in-law. What he said was quiet, but it cut through the room far more effectively than her shouting ever had. He reminded Margarita that this was a hospital, that his daughter had given birth hours ago, and that no one, absolutely no one, had the right to intimidate her. His voice was unwavering, controlled, and filled with a restrained fury that left Margarita visibly pale. She attempted to defend herself, muttering something about family matters, but Anna's father shut that down immediately. He informed her that if she continued behaving this way, hospital administration and security would be involved, and that any further access to the baby would be reconsidered. Margarita blinked rapidly, stunned, unable to form a coherent reply. For the first time since entering the room, she fell silent. Anna felt something inside her loosen, like a knot finally untied. Her father's calm protection washed over her, giving her the strength she desperately needed. Margarita, realizing she had lost control of the situation, muttered a stiff, embarrassed excuse and backed out of the room, leaving Anna with her newborn, her peace restored, and a quiet gratitude she would never forget. When the train station clock struck midnight, Lena stood alone on the cold platform, clutching a small, worn-out suitcase. The wind tugged at her coat, carrying with it the distant rumble of arriving trains and the hollow chatter of travelers who, unlike her, knew exactly where they were going. She had left home in a hurry, her heart bruised by the realization that she had been abandoned by the very person she trusted most. His last words echoed in her mind, calm, almost indifferent, telling her not to wait, not to expect anything from him anymore. She had replayed them all the way to the station, trying to understand how love could dissolve so suddenly, how someone could walk away so easily. What hurt most wasn't the breakup itself, but the speed with which he replaced tenderness with coldness. Lena felt as though she had been running toward a destination that no longer existed. As the next train's announcement blared through the speakers, she gripped her suitcase tighter, unsure whether she should board or stay. She had no plan, she only knew she needed to escape, to move, to put distance between herself and the chaos she had left behind. She felt lost in a way she had never known before, like she was standing on a threshold between her old life and a terrifying, empty unknown. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she quickly wiped it away, hoping no one would notice. But someone did. An older man, wrapped in a thick scarf and leaning on a cane, had been sitting on the bench near her. His eyes, gentle yet perceptive, followed her movements. After a moment, he slowly stood and approached her, not too close, not imposing, but enough to show he had noticed her distress. "Miss," he said in a soft, patient voice, "you look like someone who's trying very hard to be brave." Lena blinked, startled that a stranger would speak to her with such genuine concern. She tried to smile, but it faltered. The man nodded, as if he understood everything she wasn't saying. "You're rushing somewhere," he continued, glancing at her suitcase, "but I fear it's the wrong station you're running to." His words were gentle, but they landed with surprising weight. Lena frowned, unsure what he meant. He explained that sometimes, when we are hurt or abandoned, our first instinct is to flee, to anywhere, to nowhere, just to make the pain feel smaller. But rushing in the wrong direction, he said, only deepens the loneliness. He looked at her with quiet wisdom and told her that running from heartbreak did not heal it, facing it, understanding it, and choosing herself again did. Lena felt something shift within her, a fragile thread of clarity threading through her confusion. She realized she hadn't been searching for a new place, she had been trying to outrun the emptiness inside her. The man's words settled into her heart like a warm light cutting through fog. For the first time that night, she took a deep breath and felt her chest ease. The train doors opened with a hiss, but Lena didn't move. She watched others board, watched the doors close, and watched the train disappear into the night. She wasn't ready to run anymore. She thanked the man with a sincerity that trembled in her voice. He simply nodded, as if this was the answer he had hoped for. Lena turned away from the tracks, not toward escape anymore, but toward the beginning of finding herself again. The episode had barely begun when tension started threading through the air like an electric wire ready to snap. Bob Thornton had been invited to The View to promote his new project, but from the moment he settled into his seat, something felt off. His posture was stiff, the smile he offered the audience looked more like a grimace, and Joy Behar, known for her sharp tongue and unfiltered commentary, immediately picked up on the friction. She began with a light joke, a harmless tease, at least in her mind, but Bob's expression darkened, and instead of laughing it off, he shifted irritably in his chair. The audience chuckled, unaware of the storm gathering behind his eyes. The hosts moved on to questions about his film, but Bob answered in clipped phrases, barely masking his annoyance. Joy raised an eyebrow, prompting him to elaborate, which only made him bristle more. She pressed again, trying to nudge him into conversation, but he took it as provocation. Suddenly, he interrupted her mid-sentence, his voice sharper than anyone expected. "If you're not going to talk about the work," he snapped, "why am I even here?" The studio seemed to inhale all at once, the chatter stopped, mugs froze halfway to lips, and even the crew behind the cameras stood rigid. Joy, taken aback but not intimidated, responded with the sarcasm only she could deliver. She reminded him that The View was a discussion show, not a scripted interview, and if he wanted predictable questions, he should have stayed home. Her words, delivered with a raised chin and steady gaze, ignited the spark that had been burning silently between them. Bob leaned forward, his tone turning confrontational as he accused the show of ambushing him, twisting his words, and disrespecting him as a professional. His voice grew louder, overlapping Joy's attempts to keep the conversation civil, and his agitation spilled over the table like wildfire. The audience, unsure whether to laugh, gasp, or stay silent, watched the awkward exchange unfold with fascinated discomfort. Producers gestured frantically from offstage, urging the hosts to steer things back on track. But Joy, never one to back down from a challenge, called him out on his behavior. She asked him why he agreed to appear if he couldn't handle basic conversation. That question, blunt and pointed, pushed him past his breaking point. Bob shoved back his chair, the legs scraping loudly across the studio floor. He stood up, microphone still attached, and declared he had better things to do than argue on national television. Gasps rippled through the audience. The hosts exchanged shocked glances as he marched toward the exit at the side of the stage. A stagehand hurried after him, trying to detach his mic pack, but he barely slowed down, muttering angrily under his breath. Joy leaned back in her chair, exhaling a long breath that mingled amusement with disbelief. "Well," she said dryly to the audience, "that's one way to end an interview." The crowd erupted into uncertain laughter, partly relieved the tension had broken, partly stunned by what they had witnessed. The cameras cut to commercial, but even as the lights dimmed, everyone on set knew this moment would go viral by the end of the day, an unexpected clash that no one saw coming, but everyone would be talking about.